that we're all crypto monarchists. We all think Trump is Caesar.
I didn't say crypto.
Yeah. Problem is this. I am not calling for the overthrow of the American regime. The problem is that the American regime has been overthrown.
It's a room full of failed Hollywood folk, just in a circle together. All of them. Failed scriptwriters, failed actors, failed radio shock jock hosts, all of them just in a circle being like, so yeah, Hitler 2 wouldn't be bad, right? I'm not saying we want Hitler 2, but I'm just saying Hitler the sequel, it's worth discussing. Definitely worth bringing up. We should bring up Hitler 2.
I shouldn't say new. It's been sort of fermenting for the last handful of years, but I think it's really gaining prominence now, both in the very intellectual part of the American right, but also in the very fringe parts of the American right. And the fact that what I'm about to bring up is happening in both of those places, like people who we all in this room read, people with whom we are friendly, people with whom we admire, are participating in this.
Thanks to Press Progressive, appreciate you.
Conversation. Also, the complete whack jobs, the people who I don't think should have any voice in our movement. I think that they're malevolent forces, are also circling the same idea. That makes the idea, I think, something that we should talk about, and that's this idea that the American experiment is over. This idea that none of our institutions
threaten me
that
with a good time.
have taken us through the last 2+ centuries on this continent
Michael,
exist anymore, that we can't find any solution to our cultural and political problems through the political system, and that perhaps it's time to look to older systems, strongman, monarchy, even dictator. I mean, when you have
all right, pause. I just want
to
you know, it's easy to get distracted at how all of these
sucking on that phallic object.
Well, these like tiny little men are playing make believe like they're big boys, and it's possible to get distracted from what Jeremy Boring is saying. But he is saying our institution seems to be failing, that there's problems here, and you could stop that conversation there, and we could have had that conversation. The real question becomes, okay, if we accept that premise, and there's some reasons to accept that premise on some level, what is the failure about? Like, what is it? And how do you address it? It would be more democracy, right?
I just want to take one quick. There we go. Okay, the best I could describe this is I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to do the Tony Soprano way of holding a cigar, where you curl, your index finger a little around the circumference of it. And it only works if you've been doing that a lot, and also being badass helps. But like, if you do it enough, then you would be completely natural in the way you hold it. While at the same time, it almost looks as if you're holding it in a way that's provocative and you're asking a question or something like that, because it's there, right? And then you can also use it just as a form of intimidation. If you got none of that, if you're fucking zero Riz, Michael Knowles here, yeah, it does kind of look like you're sucking a dick. It doesn't feel like around the. But either way, sorry, tell us about the dictatorships.
We tax so that we don't have this distribution of power that puts so much power, economic and political, in one hands. That's one way about going it. And their answer is, we concentrate power even more.
Aristocracy, baby, bring it back.
Exist anymore, that we can't find any solution to our cultural and political problems through the political system, and that perhaps it's time to look to older systems, strongman, monarchy, even dictator. I mean, when you have major voices in the sort of conservative intelligentsia,
name them,
openly discussing the idea of whether a dictator will be required to save.
I mean, I guess it's good to laugh at all the foolishness that's also happening at, the faux masculinity, because what they're saying is really horrifying. I mean, these are some of the biggest right-wing political pundits on the biggest right-wing political independent pundit network, talking about how in the inner circles, it really does seem like a lot of right-wingers are discussing, can we bring back dictatorships? Do they work better? Should we have a monarchy? Should we have a monarch, and how can we achieve that? Will that help the ruling class? Because of course it will. I mean, fascism, the final stage of capitalism, effectively to have a far-right dictator basically try and secure those with capital while fucking everyone else, scapegoating and targeting marginalized communities and minorities. That's something that you're genuinely entertaining. in the fucking, you know, decaying American empire. That's not good. That's real bad, you know?
This country, or an emperor would be required to save this country, or a king would be required to save this country. I think that that's something that merits actual conversation.
Okay, so let's be clear here. In the Claremont Institute, all those guys at the Claremont Institute are doing that. Let's be clear what's going on here. It's not that it merits being addressed, and we need to push back on this movement that's burgeoning in the right. And incidentally, he's even saying, like, he's talking about the Groypers, because there's a big fight with the Daily Wire and Candace Owen and the Groypers, because, you know, all of a sudden Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring are like, oh, wait a second, they're talking about Jews. That seems somewhat problematic.
Why are my replies filled with Christ is King?
I mean, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the Groypers have been going through some weird shit lately. So Nicholas J. Fuentes, after Elon Musk once again let him back on the platform, the United States defeated the wrong enemy in World War II. Nazism was part of response to the global communist revolution being fermented by Stalin, and Hitler prevented the Soviet Union from invading all of Europe and inflicting rape, famine, and genocide. Isn't it great? You got him back on the platform so he can spread this fucking level of nonsense. Not to mention something else that happened pretty wild. So I don't know if you remember this little character here, Carolyn Borisenko. And she's apparently the VIP speaker at the next America First, aka Groyper conference. Previous speakers have included Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example. So basically the neo-Nazi movement of the youth neo-Nazi movement of the United States has her speaking. It says, we're excited to welcome journalist Carolyn Borisenko as a VIP for AFPAC. Be there in Detroit. Now, I wanted to point out that she actually got canceled by the right for these, let's just say, takes. Yes, they do. Everyone who died in the Holocaust choose to die in the Holocaust because before they were ever born, because they collective wanted to understand the experience of ultimate oppression. That's why Hitler went to heaven. These takes, which she doubled and tripled down on, because she was given ample opportunity by other people on the right to be like, whoa, what's going on here, Carolyn? This is super fucky. She just kept on saying that she believes and understands the world insofar as that there is actually a set amount of souls that live in the other world, or, you know, the netherworld. So there's just like a set of souls just floating around, and those souls get to decide when they want to become humans. And so each one gets to pick, like, hey, I want to be Cleopatra. And then when they're like, okay, and then slurp, and then you go into the womb or whatever, and then you pop out, and then you're Cleopatra, you live as Cleopatra. Then when you die, you go back to that little gooey nether realm where you're then picking what to do next. And that was her way of being like, no, this isn't deeply weird or anti-Semitic or racist or fucked up or even just a wild thing to think and or say. I have a theory. Let me explain. Let me explain. Everyone was like, what the fuck? And it was too much for fucking PragerU. PragerU ended up taking her video down. She had one of those really wild PragerU videos where it was just like, I used to be a Democrat and a leftist until people were mean to me in my knitting circles. That was her story. And she's like, and everyone was so mean to me in my knitting circles and always talking about, you know, how I need to stop using slurs and shit like that. And then I went to a MAGA rally and everyone was so nice to me. And that's when I realized right-wingers and right-wing ideology is correct. And so that's why I became a right-winger. And so for a while, she was like, you know, she had a PragerU video. She started appearing. She had a YouTube channel that was growing rapidly. She was doing stuff with, I believe, Weed Lord and some crossovers. But then this came out, and even Dennis Prager was like, okay, time for some cancel culture. Takes down her PragerU video, but did not take down the PragerU Facebook video. So you can still see it if you want. Last I checked was, I think, maybe like 6 months ago or something. So if you want to go see that, I think it's still on their Facebook if you want to watch that. So yeah, pretty wild that the Groypers were like, yeah, I mean, you know, this is enough of a nod for us to be like, we're down. But then obviously this is even more fucked up. Libertarian gubernatorial candidate Carolyn Borisenko carried on relationship with incarcerated child pornographer, threatens to sue anyone who talks about it while desperately seeking attention. And so Amanda pointed this out, and I think she, like, when she saw this at first, she did a rage, like, you're trans, and then blocked her. Which is a really wild fucking way to burn your account right before that happened. Let me see if that account is also here. Oh yeah, here it is. You're a coward, right? You're a Tiesler, right? And then blocked.
We just thought we could be racist. We didn't realize that this would involve Jews. I mean, when has that ever happened? And so despite the fact that they know this is also being embraced by people who want to be authoritarian and also sort of like, you know, get rid of the Jews. They're like, we need to consider this. We just want to do it the right way. Here we go.
Well, I just want to say this is the new way that the right is kind of moving, right? I mean, gone are the days, I think, of the branding of the Bush era or like the neocon orthodoxy being the thing that they put to the forefront.
Yeah, I think the very real reality that some people need to, you know, grapple with is the concept of, yes, if America goes full fascist and removes any semblance of democracy and then starts to ally itself with other far-right authoritarian governments globally, especially if Israel, which is already a far-right administration, maybe the furthest right, I've heard some scholars suggesting its history right now with, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu's eliminationist project. Well, when you have a very heavily armed and well-equipped, you know, potentially fascist government in one part and allying as strongly with America, and, you know, Donald Trump has already stated that he's absolutely unequivocally going to be supporting Israel and whatever it decides to do, and even right now Benjamin Netanyahu wants Donald Trump to win, which is another terrifying prospect of all that. Well then, yeah, there's Americans who are starting to say, hey, if in the event of us moving towards that, how exactly do we position ourselves? Like, where would we find ourselves that's going to be the most economically beneficial to me?
And like this almost flag waving patriotism of this, because there's nothing more anti-American than what they're saying right here. I mean, the rosiest picture of us declaring independence from Britain was in part because we wanted to get out of a monarchy and to develop a republic that had some democratic elements in it. So this is extremely anti-American, and they're not even really shying away from that. I think
post-colonial republic, I might say. That's after genociding the indigenous people who lived there.
20 or 30 years ago, conservatives would be saying, like, screw the monarchy, right? But maybe not. I don't know. But this is more like, this is Steve Bannon's vision taking over the Republican Party. It's Orban, it's Bolsonaro, it's Trump, it's Modi. This is the future of far-right politics in the world.
There's a strain of conservative thought. The Strauss.
Well, I mean, the only good thing about Bolsonaro is he's more addictive. He's more addicted to spending time in the hospital than he is to outward trying to, you know, actually govern a fascistic government. So that's one plus.
Who perceived a dynamic where really, like, the elite are basically the parents and need to be doing this. But these guys are now making it a popular movement for a dictator. I wonder what they see on the political horizon where they may want to till the ground for this idea. Like, who might that person be in the future? But let's continue.
An emperor would be required to save this country, or a king would be required to save this country. I think that that's something that merits actual conversation. So I thought, rather than talking about the latest stupid thing Joe Biden said, or, you know, the most salacious details from the Trump trial, although they are fun to talk about, let's talk about something that we can only talk about when we're together.
And the right are so primed for fascism. You know, they all have blue balls. They want full release. Listen to this. Like, you were discussing the very concept of ending the American Republic as you know it in lieu of a fucking monarch or a dictator.
Let's get to the deep stuff.
So, Michael, you're a monarchist.
Yeah, well, they tie in. He pins it on the Catholic that we're all crypto monarchists. We all think Trump is Caesar.
I didn't say crypto.
Yeah. And by the way, we don't think that Donald Trump ought to be Caesar. We think that Baron Trump ought to be Caesar. Okay, those are very different things. No, look,
good stuff.
The problem is this. I am not calling for the overthrow of the American regime. The problem is that the American regime has been overthrown.
Pause it just real quickly.
And
These are like
been
failed Hollywood people sitting around like
I know.
Oh,
it's so true. Matt, you're right on point. It's a room full of failed Hollywood folk just in a circle together. All of them. Failed scriptwriters, failed actors, failed radio shock jock hosts, all of them just in a circle being like, so yeah, Hitler too wouldn't be bad, right? I'm not saying we want Hitler to, but I'm just saying Hitler the sequel, it's worth discussing. Definitely worth bringing up. We should bring up Hitler 2.
Congress.
It's unbelievable. It really is sort of astonishing.
The overthrow of the American regime. The problem is that the American regime has been overthrown, and it has been overthrown by the 17th Amendment, which fundamentally orders the relationship of the states to the federal government. It's been overthrown by Congress giving away all of its power to the executive agencies. It's been overthrown by any number of things that have taken place, not over the last 10 years.
Can you just pause it really briefly? You don't even need to take it off the screen, but when he talks about the 17th Amendment there, that is literally an anti-democracy argument, because that allowed for, if I'm not mistaken, the democratic election of senators, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is him saying
Too much democracy has.
the Senate is
110
too
years ago.
democratic. The filibuster Senate is too democratic for Michael Knowles.
Yeah.
over the past 150 and 200 years. And even that is not necessarily to be lamented. It just happens. You can't rewind the tape. You can't go back in time. But the argument to look towards certain classical thinkers, notably Polybius, is that there are different kinds of government. Our founding fathers and framers wrote about this a lot, and I think they were channeling Aristotle and Polybius. Polybius's idea of the cycle of regimes is that you got three acceptable forms of regime, and then you've got their kind of evil twins. So you've got monarchy, which can be good. Monarchy, when it's good, is governing for the common good. When it goes bad,
When is monarchy good? It was full-blown revolutions to end it.
it's a tyranny, and it's just like a dictator for his own self-aggrandizement. Aristocracy can be good. There have been good aristocracies. Aristocracy means good, or governing for the good. The bad version of that is oligarchy. We see those all around the world. Democracy can be good. A republic can be a really good thing, but it turns into mob rule when it goes bad. And you ignore the common good and you govern for yourself. And our framers and founding fathers wrote about that ad nauseum.
No, but pause it.
So yeah, they're totally trying to normalize just ending any form of liberal democracy in the United States, and just discussing that as if it's like something that has valid, I don't know, credibility at this point in history. That's fucked.
But what they wrote about also was the fact that the monarchy was something where you couldn't have actual representation of the people. He's avoiding that entire premise that the founders were explicitly anti-monarchy. Maybe like if you were to poll Americans and ask what the founding fathers' opinions on politics were, just the number one thing people would say would be they didn't want to have a king anymore.
Especially the regular people. Like Thomas Paine was more popular with everyday people than most of the founding fathers were, because he spoke to them with like common sense and that sort of stuff.
But here's the bottom line. They are anti-democratic. I mean, this is just the bottom line. They are anti-democratic. They are basically saying that, look, sometimes this form of government, sometimes that form of government works, sometimes this form of government works better. And of course, what better means is a function of like where you stand in society, incidentally. But fundamentally, what they're saying is we do not like democracy.
Founding fathers were not anti-king. Yeah, I mean, but I don't know if they understand the true organization of the United States. I mean, they also try to spread a rumor that they apparently were all like religious zealots when a lot of them were secularists. You have but to look to the Jefferson Bible to kind of get a taste of that. More escaping the reigns of having a religious oligarchy rather than simply abolishing the monarchy or any association directly altogether.
And certainly you need checks and balances within a democracy. Certainly there are things that society leans into or maintains that are unjust. But on some level, like when everybody agrees to like what our aspirations are in a society, you set up systems in which to determine, are we pursuing those aspirations? For example, every man is created equal. When those words were written, people were slaves.
Yep.
The aspiration is there. You set up mechanisms in which to make sure that we are carrying out those aspirations. And sometimes they break down.
It was all white
land
owning males were created equal.
Politics and war to rectify certain things, and they don't get fully rectified. But the point is is a subscription to the idea that democracy, the idea of as many people as you can in a society having the ability to dictate their future and their destiny within the context of that society, is in and of itself a positive trait. And these guys simply do not subscribe to that.
They don't
notion.
believe that. They don't believe in government, right? So government, a good test of government's health is its responsiveness to the people, right? And they see that it's become less, it's because that it's not sufficiently responsive, and they think, let's make it even less responsive so we can just have a sole person making decisions and what's good for the rest of people, a strong man.
I'm not even convinced that they believe that it's less responsive to the people. I think they just think it's less responsive to them.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think they do see the problem with, like, there's too many, and who might those be? Too many people are getting too much of a say in our society.
Too many wokes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is. It's, for a long time, we were able to run everything. We look around this room and we would represent the diversity of where we would be on every other channel and to every other context and every other format. There would be different types of people. There would be a bald guy, and then a young guy, and then a guy with a beard, and then a guy in a sport coat.
You're describing British television.
And that would be the diversity that you would have. And now it's just off to the races. Go ahead.
So the question is, where are we in that cycle of regimes? Unless you believe that America just paused history, if you really believe we've as Fukuyama, at the very least, is caricatured as having said, that we've reached the end of history and it's over and liberal democracy
I'm sorry,
won. And,
who said that?
Francis Fukuyama.
Okay.
having said, that we've reached the end of history and it's over and liberal democracy won. And unless you think history is really over, then you do have to entertain the possibility that something will come next.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know who those guys are that you just mentioned.
There's some buddies
Was
of
it
mine from New York.
Polybius? Okay. I'm kind of,
Wait,
I agree almost with the diagnosis of the people you're talking about, Jeremy.
Here comes the theocratic fascist.
I do think that the institutions are fundamentally broken. I don't see any political solution to it, but I also don't think that a dictator is the solution either.
Wow.
So
Matt
essentially,
Walsh.
we're just screwed. Is where I land on it, I guess.
I might have.
Anybody watching this is sniffing just farts. Just straight sniffing farts.
I was going to say paint.
they
but-
actually, after this, they actually try and sell it bottled.
The Daily Wire, the air.
Oh
It
my
smells crazy. In there.
I got an email from somebody who was at who's been to the Joe Rogan Club in Austin, Texas. Heard people
The comedy mothership.
yeah, and heard people there get uptight about, like, criticizing of King Charles. Like, they're sensitive to the, and it's just bizarre.
What?
Bro, King
Yeah.
Charles had a tough job.
Yeah, man. He's the king. It's very weird.
Wait. Okay.
It's becoming, I think it's becoming a thing on the right.
Well, that's scary. You never want to have Matt Walsh be anything close to the voice of reason in a room. That's usually signs that things are pretty fucked up.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multi Mondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood. As well as every other person you see on the screen right now, this show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/theserfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, you know, help us exist.